in and out of the elevator a lot. She pulls her body back like she's trying to hide from somebody.
Roll it back again.
She jams a lot of different buttons on the elevator. She goes out into the hallway and appears to be doing this weird hand motion, like she's gesticulating while she's speaking to someone in front of her.
She's got to be talking to someone.
There's no one.
On February 19, 2013, a maintenance worker climbed to the roof of a hotel in downtown Los Angeles. He was not investigating anything. He was responding to a complaint. Low water pressure. That was all. He opened the hatch of one of the rooftop water tanks. He looked inside. What he found had been there for 19 days. And for the past 6 of those days, the hotel's guests had been drinking that water, showering in it, making their morning coffee with it. What I am about to tell you is not a ghost story. It is not a conspiracy. It is not a game. It is the story of a 21-year-old woman named Elisa Lam, a daughter, a writer, a traveler, someone who called her parents every single day, until one day, she didn't. And it is the story of everything that was missed, everything that was ignored, and the questions that even now have never been fully answered. Stay with me, because this one, you need to hear from the beginning. Before we go anywhere near that hotel, before we talk about elevators and rooftops and water tanks, you need to know who Elisa Lam was. Not who the internet turned her into, who she actually was. Her full name was Lam Hoi. In the Western tradition, she went by Elisa. She was born and raised in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Her parents had immigrated from Hong Kong. They built a life in a new country. They raised their daughter there. She was a student at the University of British Columbia. She was quiet, observant, the kind of person who processed the world through writing rather than speaking. She loved books the way some people love landmarks, as places she had actually been, as things that had genuinely changed her. In mid-2010, when she was around 18 years old, Elisa started a blog. She called it Ether Fields. It was not a performance. It was not curated for followers. It was a record of fashion she admired, of cities she wanted to visit, and increasingly, honestly, unflinchingly, of what it meant to live with a mind that did not always cooperate. Because here is something the elevator footage never tells you. Elisa Lam had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, specifically bipolar disorder with psychotic features. This is not a mild diagnosis. This is not just mood swings. During severe episodes, this illness affects perception. A person can experience hallucinations, paranoia, a complete reorganization of what feels real and what does not. Elisa knew this about herself. She had language for it. Words like episode, relapse, recovery. Words that belong to people who have been through the cycle enough times to name its stages. She was in her early 20s. She had already been through it multiple times. In January 2012, exactly 1 year before she traveled to Los Angeles, she wrote about a relapse on her blog. It had hit at the start of a school term. It forced her to drop several classes. She wrote that she felt, and these are her exact words, so utterly directionless and lost. She published that publicly, because she believed in honesty about mental illness. At a time when most people her age were performing wellness on the internet. I want you to hold that. A young woman, writing the truth about a very bad week. Not for sympathy. Not for attention. Because she believed the truth was worth saying. Her family knew her history well. She had a pattern when the medication stopped. She would hallucinate. She would hide. Once she hid under her bed. She had been hospitalized at least once. Her family had watched her come back from it. Every time. She always came back. She was also, in this matters, brave. The specific kind of brave that does not get celebrated enough. The kind that shows up every morning when your own mind is the hardest thing to manage. The kind that books a flight anyway. That makes plans anyway. That calls her parents every day from the road so they know she is still okay. She was not fragile. She was resilient in a way that is genuinely hard to sustain. And in January 2013, she decided to go somewhere new. She planned a solo trip along the California coast. Los Angeles, San Diego, Santa Cruz, San Francisco. A young woman, a camera, a list of places she had been meaning to see. She packed her bag. She packed her medication. She called her parents. And she got on a plane. Now, the Cecil Hotel, 640 South Main Street, downtown Los Angeles. You need to understand what this building is. Not just what it looked like in 2013. What it had been. For nearly a century. The Cecil Hotel opened in 1924. It was built to be luxurious. Art Deco architecture. 700 rooms. An opulent lobby. The kind of place that announced itself as somewhere worth arriving. That is not what it became. Within a decade, the Great Depression had arrived. The neighborhood shifted. The guests changed. And the Cecil began collecting something that luxury hotels are not supposed to collect. Deaths. Over the following decades, the building became associated with a specific kind of despair. Guests who checked in with no intention of checking out. Bodies found in rooms. Bodies found on the pavement below. It earned a name on the street. People did not call it the Cecil. They called it the suicide. Not as dark humor. As a warning. Serial killers stayed within its walls. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, lived at the Cecil during his killing spree in the mid-1980s. Another serial killer, Jack Underwater, stayed there in 1991 while murdering women in Los Angeles. Two serial killers. Same building. Different decades. The Cecil did not cause what they did. But it absorbed it. The way certain places absorb everything that happens inside them. And never fully release it. By 2013, the Cecil had been partially rebranded. The lower floors operated under a different name. Stay on Main. A budget hostel. Marketed to travelers. To young people passing through Los Angeles on limited budgets. People who found it on a booking site. People who did not know its history. People like Elisa Lam. She arrived on January 26, 2013. She checked in. Shared room. Other travelers around her. She was, by all early accounts, functioning. Exploring the city. Documenting it. Being present in it. She called her parents. She was okay. But something was shifting. Quietly. The way it always does. Not all at once. The way weather changes before anyone checks the forecast. 3 days into her stay, other guests in her shared room complained to management about her behavior. The hotel moved her to a private room on the same floor. The nature of that behavior was not fully documented publicly. But the pattern it suggests is familiar to anyone who understands this illness. Disrupted sleep. Unusual speech. Actions that made the people around her uncomfortable. Without being overtly threatening. The hotel's response was administrative. Move her to a different room. Reduce the friction. Continue operations. Nobody asked if she was all right. Nobody called anyone. Nobody documented a welfare concern. She was now alone. In a private room. On a floor with access to a fire escape. In a building with decades of suffering in its walls. And her medication levels were dropping. During her time in Los Angeles, she attended a live television taping in Burbank. Security removed her from the audience due to concerning behavior. She was escorted out. And released. Back to the Cecil. No one followed up. At some point during her stay, she walked into the hotel lobby. And announced out loud to no one in particular. That she was crazy. Think about what it takes for a person to say that. Not as a joke. Not as self-deprecation. As a declaration. As a person whose grip on what is real is loosening. And who, somewhere in some deep surviving part of themselves, knows it. She was asking to be seen. In the only words she had left. Nobody responded. The lobby continued. The Cecil absorbed it. The way it had absorbed everything else. January 31, 2013. Late evening. Elisa Lam steps into an elevator on the 14th floor of the Cecil Hotel. She is alone. What happens next was captured on a security camera. The footage runs for approximately 2.5 minutes. The LAPD would release it to the public on February 13th, while Elisa was still listed as a missing person. If you have not seen it, I want to describe it to you carefully. Not to sensationalize it, but because understanding what is in that footage, and what is not, is central to understanding this entire case. She enters the elevator. She begins pressing buttons. Multiple buttons. Not in a deliberate sequence. Not to reach a specific floor. She presses them the way a person presses buttons. When the act of pressing feels necessary. But the logic behind it has dissolved. She steps out of the elevator. She looks left. She looks right. She peers into the hallway. She is checking for something. Not someone. Something. That distinction matters. When a person is in psychotic crisis, the fear is not always rational. It does not always have a face. It can be the space between things. The angle of a corridor at night. The specific quality of silence in an empty hallway. She steps back inside. The elevator doors remain open. They do not close. She looks at them. She steps out again. Her hands move in slow, deliberate patterns. When this footage went viral, the world decided those hand movements meant something specific. A ritual, a signal, a game, an invocation. Theories multiplied by the millions. Here is what the evidence actually says. Forensic neuropsychologist Dr. Judy Ho reviewed the footage. Her conclusion was clinical and direct. The behaviors, the pressing, the peering, the hand movements, were consistent with a psychotic episode. Disorganized thinking, disorientation, severe bipolar disorder, unmedicated at its most acute. And the doors that would not close? She had pressed the door hold button when she entered. That button keeps the elevator open for 2 minutes. She did not know she had pressed it. In her state, the doors that would not close were not a mechanical function. They were confirmation of something her mind had already decided was true. That she was not safe. That something was coming. She walks away from the elevator. The doors close behind her. That is the last image the camera captures. She does not come back. What happens after she leaves that elevator exists only in forensic reconstruction. The camera does not follow her. There is no further footage. What investigators pieced together came from the physical evidence, and from understanding what a mind in full psychotic crisis does. When it believes it is being hunted, it runs. It finds somewhere to hide. Somewhere enclosed. Somewhere dark. Somewhere the thing it is running from cannot reach. The roof of the Cecil Hotel is not easily accessible. There are 4 ways to reach it. 3 are fire escapes on the sides of the building. The 4th is a rooftop door. Locked, with an alarm that activates when opened. Investigators believe she used the fire escape. The rooftop hatch on the water tank was found open. The tanks themselves are large. 4 feet by 8 feet. They are not designed to be entered. To climb into one, a person would need to scale the exterior of the tank, lift a heavy hatch, lower themselves inside, and either leave the hatch open, or let it fall closed above them. Investigators found no fingerprints from another individual, no DNA from another individual, no signs of a struggle on the roof, no evidence of another person. The lead detective stated in deposition that he and his partner tried to construct a scenario in which someone else put her in that tank without leaving any trace. They could not do it. The conclusion: she climbed in herself, seeking refuge, believing she was hiding from something that existed only in the reality her illness had constructed for her. That is the most devastating sentence in this entire case. She was trying to survive, in the only way her mind would allow her to. What happens inside that tank in the hours that follow? The record cannot tell us precisely. The coroner's conclusion is accidental drowning. No physical trauma. No signs of struggle. No evidence of another person. Only Elisa. And the water. And the dark. 19 days pass. The hotel continues operating below. Guests shower. Drink coffee. Brush their teeth. They begin to notice the water pressure is low. The water tastes strange. The color is not right. They complain to the front desk. February 19th. A maintenance worker named Santiago Lopez climbs to the roof to inspect the tanks. He opens the hatch of one cistern. He looks inside. He finds her. Her body, her clothing, her watch, her room key. Still there. 19 days later. Still there. Santiago Lopez has spoken about this publicly only in fragments. He found her doing a routine job. He has carried it since. The weight of an ordinary morning that became something else entirely. That weight belongs to him now. Uninvited. Permanent. The autopsy was performed on February 21st. Initial results were inconclusive. The full coroner's report was released 4 months later in June 2013. The ruling: accidental drowning. Bipolar disorder listed as a significant contributing factor. Blood analysis confirmed she had not been taking her medication at therapeutic levels. At least 4 prescription drugs were found among her belongings. The concentration in her bloodstream was low, significantly lower than it should have been. Given the date the prescriptions were filled, she had more pills remaining than she should have had. She had stopped taking them, or drastically reduced them, at some point during the trip, or before it. This was not the first time. Her family confirmed the pattern to investigators. When the medication stopped, she would hallucinate. She would hide. She had been hospitalized once before in this state. The police did not share these details with the public during the search. They were withheld. While the internet was constructing elaborate theories about the elevator footage, the most important context for understanding it was sitting in a police file, unavailable. And then something else happened. Something that reveals a different kind of danger. Internet investigators, thousands of them, decided they already knew what happened. They identified a suspect, a musician named Pablo Vergara. He had previously stayed at the Cecil. He made dark music. To certain corners of the internet that was enough. They sent him death threats. They got his accounts deleted. They inundated him with accusations. He almost died by suicide. Hard evidence later confirmed he was in Mexico. For the entire duration of Elisa's stay at the Cecil, he had nothing to do with her death. Nothing. He is still living with what was done to him. An innocent man. Nearly destroyed by people who believed they were solving a mystery. That is what happens when a case becomes a game. When a person becomes a puzzle. When the audience forgets there are real human beings inside the story. Elisa's parents filed a civil lawsuit against the hotel, arguing negligence, that the signs were visible and ignored, that a young woman in crisis was managed rather than helped. The lawsuit was dismissed in 2015. No finding of liability. No accountability. No change to the record. The hotel continued. It always has. The official record says, accidental drowning, bipolar disorder, unmedicated, psychotic episode, case closed. And the forensic evidence supports that conclusion. No other DNA. No other fingerprints. No signs of another person. That is real. That is documented. That is what the science says. But I want to be honest with you about something. Because I think you deserve honesty more than you deserve a tidy ending. There are questions in this case that were never fully answered. Not because the investigation was incompetent, but because some things in the end cannot be reconstructed from evidence alone. Question 1. The roof access. There are 4 ways to reach the roof of the Cecil Hotel. 3 fire escapes. 1 locked alarm door. Investigators believe she used a fire escape. But the specific fire escape, the specific route, the exact sequence of how a woman in full psychotic crisis navigated a 14-floor building, reached the roof, located a specific water tank and climbed inside, was never fully mapped. Question 2. The hatch. The tank hatch was found open when the maintenance worker arrived. Investigators concluded she opened it herself from outside and left it open when she climbed in. That is possible. But the hatch is heavy. And the question of whether a person already inside a tank could have pulled it closed from within was raised and never definitively resolved. Question 3. The timeline. The elevator footage is timestamped January 31st. Her parents last spoke to her on January 31st. But the exact hours between that elevator and the roof, what she did, where she went, who if anyone saw her, remain unaccounted for in the public record. I'm not telling you these things to suggest a conspiracy. I'm telling you because they are true. And because the honest answer to some questions is, we do not fully know. What we do know is this. A young woman displayed signs of serious mental health crisis. Across multiple days, she was seen by guests, by staff, by security at a television taping. At no point did anyone intervene in a meaningful way. She was moved to a different room. She was escorted from a building. She was managed. She was not helped. That is not a conspiracy. That is a systemic failure. Quiet. Ordinary. Entirely preventable. And it is the most disturbing thing in this entire case. Not the elevator. Not the tank. The silence of the people who saw her struggling and did nothing.